So next up, I just want to talk about, like I'm gonna kind of move about to the code part, to the, let's see how does this actually work. And yeah, but does anyone have any question while I drink a little bit and recover from that? Mirto says, good job, thank you. Okay, so all of this said, let's start and go talk a little bit about like the code bases. Oh yeah, development guide is a good part to start from. So here, you know, if you are not too familiar with, you know, development in general, kind of like, you know, try to follow along. We're gonna go a bit on vibes, maybe, but yeah, you know, just follow along and feel free once again to ask questions if you have any. So the let's see. Let me start with GitHub. So we have our GitHub repositories. I'm gonna put them in the chat for the link. This is our GitHub that doesn't have like a README. We should add it. But these are all our, this is where our code lives, and theoretically where like also our bugs and like projects live. We have quite a few different code bases. I will show you that like this code was built very modularly, and I'll explain a little bit why in a second. But yeah, you know, feel free to jump in anywhere and kind of like read about the code bases and what each of them does, or look, I want to say, or look at the code, but like please do not judge me too much. There's part of these code bases that are better than others, and you know, this is part of like why we want more people in, so that we can start cleaning up things. So let's see, let's start, oh, where are we? Let's start with the server. So here you can see a little bit of like how things are structured. One of the main parts of BobaBoard is like Boba server. This is written in, everything is written in JavaScript, well, in TypeScript, to just let you know. The reason mostly is that we wanted to have one single language across like all of the websites, so that you know, people that wanted to jump in would have to learn one thing only to start being effective contributors. So Boba server is the server. This is where data gets processed, saved, and like sent back to the user. So you make a post on a client, this gets set to the server like saves it. When you go on a page and you try to do an operation, you need to check if the permission, if that user has like certain permissions. That is done again on Boba server. It's the one that says, yes, this post can be saved, actually saves the post, and you know, if you try to do something that you're not authorized, this is the one that kind of scolds you and tells you, no, you can't do that, sorry. It has a Postgres database, like, so that's where the data is. It's using Postgres, like kind of a safe choice, honestly. Who doesn't like Postgres these days? So not much to say there. It's not shown on this image. This is kind of actually pretty old, but still kind of works. We also have Redis as a cache. For, you like Postgres? Mirta also likes Postgres. Yeah, I mean, at this point, you know, there's a lot of choices for like if you want a relational database, but Postgres is pretty popular these days. And so yeah, that's what I did, well, what I used, and it's good, you know. I don't have super strong opinions here, except that Postgres has always worked for me. Though I used to be a MySQL person in the old days. And so it doesn't show it here, but we also have like Redis, which for people who do not know it, well, I want to say for people who do not know, it's a cache. But like, I don't know if people would know what a cache is, but it's basically just like, how do you say it? It's somewhere where you can store data to be accessed more quickly than like going back to the database and getting it again. And yeah, we are like, honestly, we are underutilizing it. There is a volunteer that's currently exploring using it for notifications, because like our notification system is a bit slow and could benefit from that. But you know, it's there, and it's gonna be useful once we get to actually like use it the way it's supposed to be used, rather than how I used it to, I guess, you know, well, I used it how it's supposed to be used, but I used it like someone that is not a backend engineer that like has deep knowledge of Redis. So the other bit that I think is relevant to the server is that we have Firebase here for an authentication server. For people that do not know, Firebase is well, now a Google Cloud product. And yeah, not this is one of those things where I'm kind of like, oh, I can't wait to get rid of you. We've been like slowly moving to getting rid of like the proprietary software that I used to like build this quickly. So Firebase is one of those things. We use it for authentication and for storage of images. And yeah, it just kind of, you know, it works. It's great because it's free. One day we will burn it down, and like, yeah. So that's it. This is kind of like the general idea of the server. We have, it exposes a REST API. That is what the client uses. Let me show you a little bit about that. So for example, the server is now running at port 4200. And let's see, realms, slug anime. Oh, 1 second. Didn't I have us? Oh no, sorry. Yeah, of course, my bad. Yeah, what am I doing? Okay. I was saying, so we have like a REST API. You know, we discussed, if you've been here in the past, we discussed REST APIs quite often because I love them and they're great. And so this is just like, you know, you go through a special address, and that address gives you information about things. So here, for example, we have the we have like a list of all the boards in a specific realm with like their name, the description, like what color they are, like every type of data that you can have. And then you can do similarly. You can see boards, you can see data for a specific board. Let's see, what can I do? Anime. So here, for example, you can go on a board. Come on, sorry, 1 second. Boards. Yeah, not a lot in here actually, but yeah, it's like you can get information about all the realm things that you have. And as I was saying, this is a REST API. You can actually, if you are so inclined, you can go here at the bottom. And something went wrong, but theoretically, let me write down fix the REST API thing that you bugged. So theoretically, I don't know when this one stopped working, because I know it was working some like soon, early-ish. Let's see, failed to fetch, weird. Let's see, do I have I have a feeling that I had actually done it. Give me 1 second, I'm gonna look at the code, because I think you can access it from the server itself. Where are you? Where are you? Give me 1 second. Let's open API. Well, I guess you can do, oh, here, API docs. So you should be able to get it. Let's see if we are lucky and if this is still working. Okay, yes. So, you know, you can like go here in our API docs and you can just like literally see everything that is possible to do in a Realm. Like, you know, look at the bars, look at the feeds, look at the users and all that type of thing. So why am I mentioning that we have this? The reason is mostly that the idea of Boba server is that, you know, it's kind of the brain of the whole operation, and it has a strong contract with, like through the REST API, you can write any client you want to make operations on it. So we're gonna see how we've written our front end to interact with the with this site, but you know, the idea is that it's its own independent unit, and if you want to write, you know, a command line interface or a bot to post to BobaBoard, that you can do it. That's the idea of Boba server and why it's kind of like separate as its own thing from everything else. And that's all I can think about. Oh, well, I mean, I guess if you're, you know, again, if you're interested, well, actually, if you have questions, this is a good time to ask them. And in the meantime, I will just say that this REST API, if you're so interested, we have a new open API spec. So yeah, this is done through, all this documentation is written through OpenAPI. So, you know, if I am a fan of OpenAPI, this just basically means that, you know, for things like our clients, we can automatically generate libraries to interact with this and make it easy for people to build, for us to make sure that our content, like, so that our requests are correct, and also for people to be able, hopefully, once this is more established, to build their own ways of interacting with this software. And so yeah, this is kind of it for the server. So from here we can go a little bit more on the client. So this is what you actually see in the browser. The client is written in Next.js. Well, first of all, it's a React application. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say about that choice. React is kind of like I want to say a very safe choice for like building a complex application. Especially when I did this, when I started this, which was I think 3 or 4 years ago at this point. You know, that was and arguably is still the coolest kid on the block. And yeah, so it's written in React and Next.js. It's very out of date. I think we're still on version 11 or 12 instead of 14, and that's like would be an amazing thing to get like some help, you know, modernizing it. And yeah, it's, let me see what else is there to say there. Well, all that comes to mind is like things that are a bit less relevant to just like the day by day. It's an Next.js front end. We have tests with Postgres. So it's not, sorry, not with Postgres. We have tests with like Playwright and Jest, though I'm switching them to vtest. We use API mocking. I don't know. Really, like all of that is a bit more like there's nothing like technologically that's particularly worth talking about, I think. Mirtato says class-based components. No, we are using hooks. I actually started this literally, I want to say, a couple months before hooks became a thing. I don't know, like, but like very, very close to the hooks release. So for example, we have like Boba editor, that it's our legacy editor, used class components because it's where I started from, and like, you know, at that time class components were still the way to do it, and then like everything else uses hooks, because by the point I got there, hooks were like the way to build with React. Mirturtle says, I'm getting back into React after a few years and I have to look up all these hooks. Yeah, no, I mean, if you were doing class-based components with React and you kind of come back, you know, it's very much like the gif of the guy with pizza that like comes in and everything is burning and everyone is like doing that. It's changed a lot. And I love hooks. I mean, this is not like the React geeking hour, but like a little bit. I love hooks. So yeah, you know, it might take you a little bit to wrap your head around them, but I do like them. Also, I kind of want to say as a disclaimer that React code in Boba is like, I built it while learning React, so there's a lot of parts in the code base that have like very rough edges. And so, you know, it's like not the best React code that you will ever see, but a React code that works. And this is also like a great thing where if you are learning to do React better, or if you do like know React better and want to save us from ourselves, you know, we are looking for people to just polish the code and learn more, like, you know, and, you know, kind of like give it a good scrub. And so, yeah, so like we have the front end, and that's kind of like, the idea of the front end is, let me talk about the components first, and then I'll tell you more about the front end. So the next code base we have is like the BobaBoard UI. So the BobaBoard UI, this one I can show you very easily, BobaBoard UI. So this is our components repository. So you have like everything that, let me see, what's a good one to start from. Let's start with the tags. So everything that you see in BobaBoard, you can find here as a as like single isolated things to work with. We are using Storybook. As you can see, this is, I don't know if you have ever seen it, but this is just a way where you can take all these small bits of the UI that like you've written, and you can just preview them by themselves without like having to run a whole BobaBoard front end to kind of work on a post. There's yeah, so you can see them all here. We have like posts, like with badges, with like accessories. You can change the accessory that you have. And this is just like how we test things. This is to highlight a post. that we use sometimes in our UI. We also have like comments for like the various things you can do. What else? Tag input, all the small little bit, also some unrelated thing like reactions that I wish we had. The bottom bar, all of it. And so this components library is like where the building blocks that are using the front end to display everything are developed. So again, this is React. I think we are at React 17, and I'm like, I so wish I had the time to move to 18, because there's a few like performance improvements, like use transition and a bunch of stuff where I'm like, oh my god, I want it so much. But yeah, we haven't yet had the time to make that jump. And yeah, for development we're using Storybook, we're using, I think, still Jest for test. I tried to move it to Vite, and I don't remember if I succeed or I failed, but like, yeah, that's a thing. I think I succeeded eventually. I don't know. It was a tough battle. Like I had like a few days or like at least a significant amount of hours where I cursed the gods of like bundling and compiling things in JavaScript. But yeah, like, you know, this is our Storybook thing, and the idea was so this is separate from the front end, as I was saying, and the idea here was, well, you know, like we're gonna have a lot of beginners that are going to join us, and so rather than have them deal with the whole complexity of like handling the front end, let's give them a way to just kind of like take these components and develop them in isolation, so that, you know, like they just came here, they make the new Storybook thing and they do the component, and I have thoughts about like how well that works. It had its pro, it had its cons, but this is like how it kind of like that. This was the thought. Oh, the other part was that because this is implemented as its own package on npm that you can install, if you do want to have you know, a post input. Where are you, post input? Post editor, here you are. The idea being, if you wanted to have, sorry, that's if you had a website and you wanted to have an editor that's similar to BobaBoard, has like kind of the same functionality, the idea was, well, I want to provide this for people because, again, I would like the code that we build here to not just be used for BobaBoard, but to be some kind of repositories of common blocks that findom people might want and like to have on their own website. So rather than every one of us having to re-implement posts whenever you want to build something that has interactivity and like maybe complex, you know, complex tags, or like allowing you to have equips on your things, the hope would be that you can just like come here and take the pieces that you like and bring them with you on your website. And so, as I was saying, the difference, where is it, Codebase? So here, one of the things that having both a Boba frontend and a BobaBoard UI components library, kind of like what it means is that we have this separation between the implementation of how things look on BobaBoard and the logic that kind of drives all these interactions. So BobaBoard UI is in charge of how does everything, how does a gallery look, how does a post look, how does like a sidebar look. And Boba Frontend is more in charge of, well, you know, like what pages are available. You have feed, how are the feed layout, what are the options that are there. Like, again, even for posts, what is the options that you have available on each of the posts on the site. Not necessarily how this is going to look, but like what is what abilities do you have on the site, and how this is going to speak with the server and translate the data from like what the server gives to like the UI that you're gonna be displaying. What else is there to say? If you are familiar with the terms of like front of the front end and back of the front end, the idea is kind of that Boba Frontend is the back of the front end of BobaBoard, and BobaBoard UI is the front of the front end. Now, if you ask me, how well have you done this division? I would be like, well, you know, it works better in some places than other. I think we have like some work to do to like better define these boundaries, but again, this is part of the work that I am going to be doing as like kind of like the most senior person right now, but also like, you know, if people are enjoy as I do, like kind of thinking about the boundaries of different pieces of software, that is very much like something that is still a bit in flux and that we are making choices on. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. The next bit that we have is Boba Editor, and this is like literally our text editor, like our content editor. Now this is, as I was saying, the first piece that I wrote, because I think that the text content inputting experience of a website, especially a social website, is the most important part of it all. And I mean, Blue Sky doesn't allow me to search GIFs from the editor yet, and I kind of hate them for it because I use GIF like it's 2013. But yeah, so this was the first kind of like part that I did build, and I will not mince words, it fucking sucks. It's terrible. I wrote it, you know, I was saying it's the first one I wrote it with class components, where still a thing in React. I didn't know React when I wrote it, so it's like very much cobbled together, like, you know, hold together with tape and rope and, you know, a bit of spit. But that is why we are actually building, and have been building for a while, a whole new editor that is going to be easier to extend. It's gonna have much more polished interaction. Like literally, Boba Editor doesn't even allow you to add alt text to images right now, just because every time we modified it, it was just a headache, because it, again, you can really see how I was learning, relearning JavaScript after 10 years of not using it at the time. And so we were like, well, you know, let's just redo it with more modern things and like done better. So that one is not actually, the code base is not actually in, it's not actually in BobaBoard, is in, I think it's in my thing still, Boba Editor next. So yeah, this is like not meant to be at all just like a BobaBoard text editor. Like the idea is like literally we learned some things building BobaBoard, and now we want to create a text editor that can display and like input content using with all the things that fandom theoretically likes to have in their content editors, but that can be used, that it's packaged to be used wherever you want. So if you want to make your own fandom website and you want people to leave comments and you want people to be able to, you know, add alt text or like search for GIFs or embed like a tweet in them, we will talk about embed in a second. This is where this is like what we are trying to build, something that is portable for everyone to use. And so you will see more about this definitely, because finally getting this in is one of the overarching goals of this year. So I briefly mentioned embeds, and really embeds were one of the main and most important things that I was focused on when starting to build BobaBoards. You can see here at the bottom, well, you can see my mouse, but you see on the bottom right, we have this like embed service, which is done with iframely. Let me show you iframely. This is an open source thing that you can, do you have some, yeah, so you can use to like basically take any website and turn it into a preview. And so, yeah, like the idea was that I think embeds right now for a forum software is one of the main things that are kind of missing. And the idea was, so the part of the idea of structuring BobaBoard the way it is structured was I wanted it to be built for communities that are that could be like, you know, self-sustainable with very, very few users on them. I think in the, like, you know, in the announcement, I kind of say, if you can get 50 people in a place and those 50 people are having a great time, that's what this is for. And so in order to be able to do something like this, the idea was, instead of BobaBoard being the place where you would go to create new content, BobaBoard is the place where you go discuss the content that was created somewhere in the somewhere else on the internet, with your friends, with the people that you like actually being with. So if someone made like a new amazing fan fiction about your blog, and you have well, your TP, I guess. Depends on what you seek in a fan fiction, I guess. But if someone made like something that you really like outside of BobaBoard, then, you know, after leaving a comment where the author can see it, the idea would be you can take that link and you can come squee about it, like talk about it with your friends on this site where you're safe to do, where you're like with the people that understand and do fandom the way you do fandom. And yeah, and so that was kind of like, that's kind of the idea about having a lot of embeds. You know, it again goes from the philosophy of this is the website that's made for 50 people to be on it. You are not, the content creation is not the focus of that. It's not made for content creator. It's made to get back that kind of sense of a cozy community where you're talking with people, discussing things, collecting things from outside, and, you know, like maybe even doing content like putting your own, we have some kink memes, putting your own like kink meme like threads on there, but that's not the main focus. And so yeah, that's kind of the rest. Let me see. Oh yeah, one thing that I'm gonna say is, because, well, in part because I knew when I was writing the editor code that, you know, I wasn't doing my best work, but like also because, like, honestly, 4 years ago, if you went to look at the available libraries for editors, they were like very shaky, very like, I don't know how long you're gonna be around. So this is very much trying as much as possible to kind of encapsulate how the content on BobaBoard like looks and like is stored and displayed. So here, hopefully the hope is that once we make once we make the switch to something like Boba Editor next, you know, we can like take this part out, run a migration on the database, and like put it back in, and theoretically everything should continue working with very little change. That's the hope. Oh yeah, like here, you know, again, this is done with React, but if underneath the editor framework is Quill.js, which, as I was saying, the code for editors was very shaky at the time, and like Quill.js stopped being upgraded like, I don't know, 8 months after I chose it to work as our base. So that's also part of why we kind of like started from scratch. And this time on we are using TipTap, which is much better, much more well, yeah, like just a much better experience. It has like, where are you? Well, this looks different than it used to look. It can be a lot more. It's not always like, it can have its own sidebar, its own thing. But yeah, table contents. It just has like a lot more capabilities, and also people are still updating it, which is great. And let me see if I forgot anything else. I keep clicking on the wrong one. Oh yeah. So the other bit is BobaNix. So it's not here because I wrote this a long time ago. And where is it? I find it here. So here. So this one, it's also not very documented as a code base. I apologize. 2 months ago is when we actually got it up. So this is a NixOS configuration. I'll try to keep it simple, but for people that do not know what NixOS is, it's kind of like, imagine if you could have an operating system that you basically write in a bunch of files what you want the configuration of your operating system to be, what programs should be there, how you want them to run, what users are in the system, and like anything, a lot of like different types of configurations. So like imagine you could have something like that. Well, that's what NixOS is in very simple terms. So the idea here is we have a BobaBoard service, and like, you know, oh, there's a bunch of options. It has like a bunch of configurations here that you do not need to understand. That's the point. And so wherever you want to host BobaBoard, as long as you choose, well, I was like, as long as you choose a host that supports NixOS, but I think most do, you can like copy this configuration, edit a couple things, run the commands on your server, and everything is set up for you. So you have a machine that has all that you've seen here. All that you've seen here. It has the server running, it has the front end running. It doesn't have the iframely service running right now. I need to make a pull request to them to fix some things before that will work. But yeah, that's the idea. We kind of like packaged it for you in a very nice, very easy to use package. And so again, the hope is that we can continue to make it easier and easier for anyone that wants to host this software and create and like allow people, whatever people they want to allow to build their own community, give them like this power. So, you know, like that might be one person that's like, I have a lot of friends and these friends like their fandom and I hate that they do not have a space. So, you know, I'm gonna take care of the technical part of this. I'm going to be the one that's like messing up with the database, messing up with making sure that, you know, the server doesn't accidentally go down, but I can give to as many of my friends as I want their own space to be in. And well, that's what I'm doing right now. We don't have that many spaces because I am one person and I'm doing a gajillion things, and so, you know, I am very limited in my time, but we have run a couple parallel communities for some time. So yeah, that's the idea, and hopefully we can make it. We're kind of attacking the problems on two sides. On one side, we are trying to make it as easy as possible to do something like this, and on the other side, you might have seen that I've been doing a lot of education, like code education, technical education for the community, trying to get the skill levels kind of like up a bit, so that more and more people might be able to both contribute to this, but also to host their own thing, however they want. Oh yeah, the other thing about like all the structure of BobaBoard that I think is important is that if you think about it, there's kind of like this pyramid structure when it comes to both rules and moderation. So you have like, you have threads. Let me go back here. You have threads, and in you have threads, and in each thread, it's not enforced right now, but the way we, the kind of the rules we have come to is OP is the king, queen, the regent, I guess, the monarch of their thread. If OP says you should go have a discussion somewhere else, OP rules in the thread. They have made the thread, it's their thread, and they decide what happens there. And then on the board, as I mentioned before, you can have roles and permissions that are specific to a board. So if you say that no one can post big anime titties on anime, that's, you know, that rule was made by whoever controls the anime board or by whoever controls the realm the anime board is in, and that's how it works. And then like going up, again, the realm also has their rules for what can be posted in it and what cannot be posted in it. Don't know why it's refreshing, but like for what can be posted in it, what cannot be posted in it. And so, again, it's kind of like this pyramid thing. And again, and you know, what is allowed in a realm might not be allowed in another. So for example, if you have a realm like, you know, this one as a gore board, it's totally possible that someone else that's making their own community will be like, no, I do not want that content here for whatever reason. And then like, that's their place. They can do, like, if they've chosen to build it, they can choose what they want to allow on it. And so then going to one level up, the Galaxy has kind of like the same philosophy. If you're hosting your own website, you are the person that decides what are you comfortable being a sysadmin for. And so, yeah, that's kind of the idea. Trying to create these layers of permission where people can kind of organize in, you know, bubbles, and Boba, bubbles where this is the place I'm happy in, these are the people I want to be on, this is how and who I want to do the internet, like experience the internet with. And I don't think that's easily allowable these days, and so this is why I made it kind of from scratch. And I think this is kind of all I have to say, to be honest, unless we start going into more details about each code base. Unfortunately, this is on holiday, like in the US, and I think a lot of like my collaborators that had questions didn't really make it to the stream, so I'm kind of like on my own, and I can decide what I want to do. But like, does anyone here have questions? Gonna drink. Like anywhere they want to go. You know, we are theoretically at time, but we also did start a bit later. So if you like, you know, I can go a little bit longer. Okay, so it seems there are no questions, but I am going to like go through something I was asked to do in private. So that is, oh, I have heard Nix is really good, but I have never tried it myself. Yeah, it's, this was my first time using Nix, too. Like, I heard about it as you did, and like, you know, I heard it's really good, but like I wasn't daring to kind of go into it. But a very generous collaborator that loves Nix helped me set it up, and that was great, because I do actually think I am like so happy that we have that capabilities. It's gonna make things so much easier for everyone. Well, first of all, like, thanks to that, I had kind of like, I gained enough courage to move out of hosting this on Google Cloud, and we're now hosting it on like DigitalOcean, because I am on a mission to divest from Google stuff. But like, you know, so I'm not a sysadmin. I've done a lot of things in my coding career, but sysadmining is like one of my very weak points. And so like I was a bit nervous about it, but NixOS made it so much, made me so much more comfortable with doing that. There's also, I think, you know, pairing that with things like Tailscale. I don't know if you know Tailscale, but you know, things that allows you to very easily enter the server to run commands. Like the hope is that, you know, there are some things that are better done like through the UI, like we have here Realm Administration UI, where you can like make invites and things. And you know, like there are things like deleting a board or moving a board that making like a whole page to like for people to click through to like make these changes in the UI. That's a lot of work. That's gonna be a pain in the ass. But now that we have like a much easier way to access like the server directly, I'm thinking things like, well, we could create like a command line program that like guides you through it with like text prompts and things like that, so that, you know, like people have a much easier time like going there and getting comfortable with like inputting a command, and in exchange we don't need to do as much work to provide people with like incredible capabilities. And so, yeah, you know, like, again, this is kind of like the balance that we are trying to strike with this. There is, like, when you go do web development, when you go develop a program like this, I think many people try to, you know, like, provide the super most simple way of doing the thing to everyone. And here, because of resource constraints, because of philosophy, we are kind of trying to do tackle it from two sides. We lower the complexity a lot, and in the meantime we try to create easy way for people to up their skills enough that they can become a lot more powerful than they would be if they were just relegated to like what we can afford and have time to build ourselves.